start with a headline in a nutshell. Donald Trump has dumped another Obama policy, quota in education. For those of you watching here in India, quota or reservation in education is a well-known concept. In America, another version of it was introduced a few years back in 2011. They called it affirmative action. It was meant to help African Americans have a better shot at admissions in schools and universities. It was the brainchild of former US President Barack Obama. He introduced guidelines for American colleges and universities to consider race as a way of promoting diversity, meaning people from certain racial backgrounds were treated more favorably during admissions. The Trump administration has done away with it. He has gone back to the George Bush policy, the policy which said that universities must promote diversity, but they should be race blind. They should look at an applicant's aptitude, not at his or her skin color. Race should be considered only when a university has no other way of achieving a diverse student class. The US Supreme Court has backed the Obama policy in the past. Many of its judgments in various cases say that universities may use affirmative action to help minority applicants get into college. Conservatives in America, though, as everywhere else, do not agree with this line. In this case, they say such reservation can hurt white Americans.
I think where we would see the opposition play out is in court. And there are obviously really important court developments going on right now. The key swing vote on affirmative action, Justice Anthony Kennedy announced his retirement last week, and he had been, in 2016, the author of an opinion that basically bolstered the idea that race can be considered among many factors. So he was considered a swing vote in that sphere. He's now retiring, and so that gives President Trump an opportunity to appoint somebody who's going to be much more skeptical and critical of affirmative action policies.
Democrats, liberals, rights activists and lawyers have joined ranks to slam this move. They say that Donald Trump is not making America great again. He's making America hate again.
This is a most unfortunate setback for those of us who care about promoting diversity on our nation's colleges and universities. We've made great progress as a nation, but there is still much work that remains to be done to close the gaps and to help ensure that colleges are truly working to attract racially diverse student applicant pools. It sends the message that the federal government doesn't believe in racial diversity, and we run the risk that we may see school officials going back to the drawing board, revising their policies and changing their approach in ways that can be really harmful to us as a country. This is a moment that requires vigilance. We're going to have to monitor carefully to ensure that schools, administrators and presidents don't seize this as a moment to gut their efforts to promote racial diversity on campus.
The decision comes at a very important time in the U.S. The U.S. Justice Department is investigating a case. This case was based on a complaint filed by more than 60 Asian American organizations. These organizations said that Harvard University discriminates against them. Applicants from an Asian background are held to an unfairly high admission standard, meaning that they're judged more sternly. Harvard has, of course, denied this. It says that its admission policy complies with American laws and that it has worked to boost financial aid to ensure economic as well as racial diversity in its classes. Critics say that Harvard has systematically kept out Asian American students to make room for applicants of other races. So it's not just the white students being discriminated against, but Asians as well. It's important to note here that the Obama guidelines were not binding by law. Neither is Trump's move. But they're an indication of what the federal government thinks, what's its stand. And they come with the unspoken message. Those who do not follow are more prone to face a probe on discrimination. Trump's decision has stirred a heated debate, not just in the US, but also here in India. Reservation is a political hot potato in this country. In India, it was introduced as a temporary measure right after independence to promote the backward sections of society. Over time, it has become a permanent appeasement tool. Reservation permeates every aspect of Indian society, from schools to government jobs. Seats are reserved for certain castes, religions and tribes. And now there's even talk of quota in private jobs. All parties across states use it to garner votes. The western state of Rajasthan, for instance, goes to the polls soon. Earlier this week, its government issued an order. It decreed 1% additional reservation for 5 communities in Rajasthan. The government has decided to put the Gujar community along with 4 others in the bracket of the most backward classes. Quota demands in India have often snowballed into violent protests. 2 years back, these were the scenes in the state of Haryana. Several people died in violent protests. The Jat community was demanding reservation. The Supreme Court of India has time and again capped quota at 50%, but politicians continue to find alternatives and to make false promises. The question is, why are so many people willing to die for reservation in India in this day and age? Because opportunities are limited. There aren't enough jobs for a population of 1.3 billion Indians. There aren't enough good schools and colleges. Reservation gives a shortcut to some people, but it takes away the level playing field. Many oppose it, mostly those who do not get quota benefits. They call it reverse discrimination. Others say that reservation should be based on a person's economic status, not his skin color or caste. The Constitution of India recommended reservation to help the downtrodden, but it was meant to be a short-term measure. 70 years after independence, why should India still have a large section of its population using the crutches of quota? This country really has taken reservation to a whole new level, but it's not the only one which practices it. In different parts of the world, quota is used as a state policy with different names. The Americans, as we told you, call it affirmative action. The British call it positive discrimination. Here's how it works.
The Trump administration has rolled back the Obama-era affirmative action policy. But the policy or the phenomenon is not new, and neither is the practice. It's called by different names around the world. In India, it's called reservation. Around the world, it may be known as alternative access, positive discrimination, or affirmative action. But the aim of all these policies remains the same. They are an effort to increase the numbers of students from underrepresented communities. Take the case of South Africa. Here, underrepresented students, especially black female students, are given admissions in higher education through an alternative access program. They are also entitled to special courses and mentoring. In the last 20 years, Africa has seen a rise in affirmative action that's targeted at inclusion of women. This has been a growing trend around the world. France has a rather unique system. Instead of approaching the issue of race directly, the French government has classified certain areas and priority education zones. Educational institutions in these neighborhoods accept a high number of students from different communities. They include immigrant students for whom French is the second language and children from low-income families. Brazil has been developing its own system of reservation. Places are reserved in the most prestigious public universities of the country for the poor, the racial minorities, and people with disabilities. From race and caste, the world is now moving towards a new form of affirmative action. 8 countries in Africa, 7 in Europe, and 4 in North America and the Caribbean now have some form of affirmative action for women. Bureau Report, WION.
Has the quota system ever worked? And for whom? Tonight we'll show you how this policy has helped politicians more than the intended beneficiaries. Let's start with the example of Bangladesh. Statistics say that the country has one of the highest graduate unemployment rates in the world, in South Asia in particular. 5 of 10 graduates are unemployed. Now, here's the catch. Despite the high unemployment rate, numerous posts in government offices remain vacant in Bangladesh, and that is because of the quota system. Let me explain this. Under the quota system in Bangladesh, 56% of the 3,000 government positions were assigned to various quotas. That means only 44% of the spots are left for general category applicants. In April this year, about 50,000 students from public and private universities protested for 3 days, compelling the Sheikh Hasina government to abolish the quota system. In India, where each and every election is fought on caste, the issue of quota assumes great importance, both politically and socially. But statistics show that the system has managed to do very little for the so-called backward community. According to the government, in 2017, only 17% of the Group A officers in the 24 ministries at the centre belong to the OBC category, other backward classes. The representation among the Group B officers, a rung lower, is even lower, that's 14%. According to the findings of the Socio-Economic and Caste Census of 2011, only 4% in each of the rural scheduled tribe and scheduled caste households have a member in government jobs. Basically, only 4% of the SC/ST community have any member in any government job in India. Another example is that of India's premier education institution. According to a report in 2015, 90% dropouts in IIT Roorkee belong to the so-called backward caste. The reservation system does give a backward caste student the opportunity to enter a college. But beyond that, it does very little for him or her. The point we're making is very simple. The year is 2018. India should reconsider giving quotas.